Hello, welcome to the I think it's 18. It says it right there on the screen. Sabres Hockey Central Extra number 18. Myself, Ryan Wolf, joined by my trusty co-host, Brayton.
Hello there.
Hi. It's a fun day in hockey land. We've had approximately over, I would say maybe 15, 16 hours to decompress at this point and
Mhm.
look back and kind of determine what exactly happened with Mike Babcock and the Buffalo Sabres. Now, for those who haven't been paying attention or did not read the article that I posted on SabresHockeyCentral.com yesterday, uh, long story short, Mike Babcock apparently had a deal in place with the Buffalo Sabres a couple days ago and then turned into going to the Toronto Maple Leafs somehow. Now, Brayton and myself, we'll quickly get this out of the way. What we believe, and I'm sure Brayton, you can add more to this in just a second, but what we believe happened was Babcock essentially did what any businessman would do. He used the people who wanted him the most as leverage and got a phenomenal deal from the Buffalo Sabres, and then went to Toronto because we all know, again, what was it? Yesterday was Wednesday. So Monday, the Sabres thought they had a deal in place with Babcock. And then Wednesday morning, Babcock himself, I don't know if it was himself or it was his agents, called Toronto and said, look, if we want to come to Toronto, if you can make this deal happen. And then from the sounds of it, it looks like the rumored deal the Sabres were going to give him was the same exact deal he got from Toronto. So it's almost as if Babcock wanted to go to Toronto all along and just used as many people as he could for leverage, which, again, you can't blame the guy because if you're going to make your money, you got to make if you're going to make your money, you got to do what you got to do. But
Yeah, absolutely.
It's unfortunate.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And I mean, his family was the one that basically, helped him make the decision. And if his family wanted to go to Toronto, then his family wanted to go to Toronto. If he wanted to, use Buffalo as that sort of leverage point with Toronto, then, that's just business. That's how business is done lately. Am I a little sour about it? I kind of feel like I'm a little sour because, he was here. He was talking with Buffalo. Buffalo was in contract talks with him. But, at the end of the day, you just got to look at it as, he wanted Toronto more. That's, whatever. That's fine. We're still doing fine in the end. I still think Toronto is at least a couple years out of being a true contender. Just because of the fact that they've got to tear down that entire team and sort of just rebuild that way. They've already done that with management and coaching from the Toronto team with the Maple Leafs to the Marlies. And now it's just players and personnel. Got to rip them down and we'll see what happens. Cause I mean, I just think that Buffalo's just fine where they are. And Toronto has got a great coach now, but still, both teams have still got a long ways to go. So,
well, I know looking back on it now, it's kind of hindsight is 2020, and you can say it's sour grapes from anybody at this point. But when you think about it, a coach doesn't make a good coach doesn't make a team good, and a good team doesn't make a bad coach good. I guess if that makes any sense. So Babcock would be nice to have in Buffalo, but not having Mike Babcock doesn't make this team bad, I guess is what I'm trying to say. And him in Toronto doesn't make a bad Toronto team good. It's just the next coach that comes in for the Sabres, just because he's got a good team, doesn't mean he's going to be good. And I feel like I'm repeating myself here, but it's just it's not that big of a deal to me, I guess. I kind of fell in love with the idea from the start that Mike Babcock was coming to Buffalo.
because why wouldn't you fall in love with the idea?
It's a wonderful idea to fall in love with, that's for sure. But
Exactly.
I feel like too many people already put the crown on him and said, this is the guy, he's going to lead this team to the Stanley Cup, before he was ever even under contract or anything. So that's where you get a lot of sour people. I mean, yeah, the way if it went down the way we all believe it to have gone down, where he used the Sabres as leverage while being a smart businessman, as mentioned, we're very, and rightfully so. I mean, it's going to add something to the rivalry between Toronto and Buffalo, I guess, but it's a coach. It's not.
Yeah.
it's not Sidney Crosby going, well, I'm going to go to Buffalo or I'm going to go to Toronto. I'm going to get a deal in place with Buffalo, then go to Toronto. It's not like that. It's like, you know, a guy who, if you put another guy in that same spot, might not be as bad, might even be better. You never know, because I agree with you, Brayton. I think the Sabres are a couple steps ahead. I mean, they're not much further ahead than Toronto is because, again, prospects don't guarantee you anything. They're just prospects. But
oh yeah,
the Sabres have a lot more in the bank than Toronto does. But then again, Toronto has a lot more pieces at the NHL level that they could take. They could take Phil Kessel or I just completely blanked on the guy's name. They could take Phil Kessel or JVR or what's that other? Yeah, Phaneuf. And what's the other idiot's name? I can't remember. I'm blanking on it.
Oh, Joffrey Lupul.
Thank you, Joffrey Lupul, that jackass in Toronto. Take any one of those guys, and you can turn them into pieces that speed up the rebuild. And that's exactly what Buffalo's doing. That's what you're going to be seeing in a few weeks at the draft. You're going to be taking parts to make a package to get better players to be good quicker. That's just, again, that's how hockey works. That's how this whole thing works. So, I mean, I'm not totally heartbroken over it. It sucks. Yes, it sucks a lot, but you know, I'm not gonna lose sleep. I didn't lose sleep over it last night, so I'm not gonna lose sleep over it in the future. I mean, it's again.
Yeah, no, I agree. I just think that the biggest surprise to me of this whole ordeal was just the backlash that, you know, most people had in this area. When the Sabres said they were out, I was just like, okay, well, that kind of sucks, but now I just want to know why. I want to know why. I mean, now at this point, who cares who he goes to? I just want to know why he decided to pull out on Buffalo. And, you know, we found out why. But the fact is just like, you know, people were complaining, people were whining on Twitter, and then other people were just, you know, from outside of Buffalo ragging on Buffalo. And I'm just like, why are you even thinking about responding to these tweets? Because these people are just saying, you know, I've been to Buffalo once. It's like, you've lived in Buffalo your whole life. So you know Buffalo better than anybody else. So why even like try and, you know, pick fights or anything like that? It was more surprising to see the results of the news than it was, you know, the news itself.
People, you know, I've learned that when people can crack on Buffalo, they do on Twitter. It's just become the fun thing to do. Like everybody at Puck Daddy, for instance, they take their swings at the Buffalo Sabres and their fans, first off, because they know they can get away with it because, you know, it's kind of their
free
thing.
Country.
Well, it's their thing. It's just what they do.
Yeah,
exactly. They know they can. When you're on Twitter, your goal is to piss as many people off as you possibly can. And if that's how they want to do it, that's how they'll do it. But you know what? In 5 or 10 years, when the Sabres are really good, and you chuck up a middle finger at them and say, look, you know, you were the guys that were making fun of them, and now you're leeching on to it to try to be cool and be a part of it. So, you know, screw you, bud. I mean, and we've got a few questions on Facebook as well, and I want to first off say thank you to people for sending in questions. That was very awesome of you. But like, for instance, with Dean over on Facebook wants to know, how did Murray screw this up? He's done some good things, no doubt, but he says here that he chased LaFontaine away and said some stupid things after the draft lottery. But then again, I mean, he says he hopes he's wrong, which I think he is wrong, because, you know, LaFontaine, that was a bad gig from the start. And with the draft lottery, I mean, it's the heat of the moment. That's why you don't stick a microphone in someone's face after. I mean, that's why the media sticks a microphone in his face afterwards, but you don't you don't I mean, I was not surprised to hear that stuff from Tim Murray, because he's a fiery guy. He's mad about it. He thought that we're the worst team, we deserve the best player, that those are the rules, but, you know, that's why the draft lottery happens. But I don't think Tim Murray did anything wrong in this situation. They offered Mike Babcock $9.50. That's $8.50 or $9.50 roughly was the rumored offer. I mean, there's not much more you can do there. At some point in time, if the guy doesn't want to be here, he's not going to be here. But you certainly can offer him the farm and then some. And that's what the Sabres did. They offered him the moon and said, if you want to be here, we'll give you everything you want. And he just, at the end of the day, he doesn't want to be here.
Yeah. I don't see how Tim Murray possibly screwed this up whatsoever. Again, the fact of the matter is just Mike Babcock wanted Toronto more than Buffalo. And, you know, because Mike Babcock, as we've heard from guys like Elliot Friedman and a lot of other people that have talked about him, he's a guy who wants to win. He's a guy who, has that ego of, I want to be the best. And if he were to come to Buffalo, I mean, we've got the best prospects. We've got an owner that will spend money, freely to, get the success of not only the Bills, but the Sabres. But the fact is that Tim Murray did not screw this up whatsoever. He offered him a contract. It was, what we expected, the 8 years. I think it was 8 and 50. But the thing was that I think that Toronto basically just kind of promised Babcock to me more that, you're going to have a closer relationship with, Shanahan or the general manager. And maybe he will have a little bit more control of player personnel than he would in Buffalo. But who knows? I mean, the answers of why are not all that clear, but I mean, it seems to me that, again, just Babcock wanted Toronto more. And, if that's what he wants, that's what he wants. You got to respect that.
Yeah. You know what? Moving on to another question. Let me get the name here just so I can give credit to where credit's due. Michael wants to know, and this kind of moves on, transitions out of the Babcock thing. Now that Babcock's obviously out of the running, who's the front runner to land the Sabres job? I wrote this in my article yesterday, but I'll just reiterate real quick. And I'm sure Brayton, you'll agree with me on this one too. Dan Bilesma and Luke Richardson are hands down top 2 candidates. It was always Mike Babcock was the apple of the eye, but if you, as they say, shoot for the moon, if you don't, what is it? Shoot for the stars or shoot for the moon or whatever and land on the stars or something. I don't know. I'm bad with my inspirational quotes today, but if you can't get Babcock, get Bilesma, get Richardson. I know Richardson is not a proven NHL head coach, but from what everyone, from what we read and what we hear and what we see from Luke Richardson, he certainly appears like he could be a guy that could easily make the jump from the AHL to the NHL and have slim to no issue transitioning his coaching style and getting people to adapt to how he coaches, especially with the fact that he is, he's played in over 1,400. I think it's 1,417 was the amount of games he's played in his National Hockey League career. So he's certainly been around the game long enough to know how the game is played, how the game should be played, and how to get across to other players. But as for Dan Bilesma, I'm kind of on the fence about him still. I mean, I was asking around Twitter yesterday, poking around, asking some Penguins people just to kind of get an idea. A lot of people think that it's Bilesma's fault that they were terrible and well, not necessarily terrible, but weren't able to get more than one Stanley Cup in his tenure. I mean, he had 2 of the greatest players in the world with Crosby and Malkin, and he only won 1 Stanley Cup, and that was the year that he took over for Therrien when Therrien was fired. So, do you look at that as a coaching ineptitude, or is it that something that the front office that they spent too much of the future for the present. So when the future came, there was nothing there. So they had to play with, they had to play depleted or had their backs up against the wall, So I think mostly from what I gathered, it was a little bit of both, but it kind of raises a red flag. You're kind of like, you had a lot of talented players, but you didn't really do much with it.
Right. And when the Penguins needed to make a trade to get healthy players, get some more depth, Ray Shero didn't do the job. He couldn't acquire those players. He didn't acquire those players. So what is Dan Bilesma going to do with a team that doesn't exactly have the depth or doesn't exactly have the talent to make it deep into the playoffs, or go up against the Rangers team and go 3-1 and then fall off? I don't think it was Dan Bilesma's fault. I think it was management, and I just think that Dan Bilesma absolutely deserves another chance. Now, is he going to be with Buffalo? I'm not sure, but I think that Buffalo needs to act. They need to at least offer him an interview and get him here to talk to him. And then if not, I think that the next route is go straight to Luke Richardson and get the guy that, a lot of people have been saying, hey, this is the guy Buffalo is going to get. This is what Buffalo is going to need. Maybe not need, but he's definitely going to get. So, I think that you hit it right on with first Bilesma, then Richardson. Another guy that maybe I would throw in the mix is Guy Boucher. I know that he is coaching in Switzerland right now. And I think he's got one more year left on his contract. And then if we decide to hire him, we'd have to. I think I read something that we have to compensate for that for the team in Switzerland. I don't know if it's with cash money or whatnot, but
just send them. Just give them Ted Nolan.
Yeah, we'll give you Ted Nolan. Yeah, that is if he doesn't go to Vancouver and coach for the Western Hockey League Giants. But
yeah,
but I mean, I think that Bilesma is number one. Then if you don't get Bilesma, then you just go with your guy in Richardson.
I think and one thing to point out about Guy Boucher is that this is how harsh the hockey world can be. Toronto did not know. Like if you think that Toronto's kind of snuck around this whole time and this was kind of a secret thing that was happening, I'll debunk the myth. I should say, Toronto was I think was a last minute thing because they bought the MLSE bought the Argonauts. So the day that they signed Mike Babcock, they had a press conference for that. I don't think they would have done that because they're very aware that hockey is like breathing in Canada. They know that. So they wouldn't have done that. Also, Toronto had Guy Boucher coming in for what I believe was a second interview for the head coaching vacancy in Toronto. And then they signed Mike Babcock. So Guy Boucher was coming into Toronto and I believe it was either set to meet with or was meeting with ownership or someone within that organization when they decided Mike Babcock was the guy. So if that tells you how cold hockey can be, Guy Boucher looking to come back to the National Hockey League, seems like he's going to get a job, and then the door gets slammed in his face. But I still think he'll get a job sometime soon. And as for just to wrap up on Bilesma, I think it's like what happened in Boston. You mortgage so much of the future to try to win the cup now that you don't think about what you're doing in the future or to the future. And then if you don't reload kind of while you're doing that, like, yeah, you can go out and say acquire Jerome McGinley like the Penguins did, but make sure when you do it, you're not blowing up the future and leaving yourself with nothing. So when it comes in a couple of years and you need to have a strong bottom six and you have nothing to either draft from or you can't work out a trade because you have no parts to trade. I think, like I said, I think at the end of the day, it falls on a little bit of Bilesma, a little bit of front office. I mean, I certainly wouldn't. I'm not totally on board with the idea of Dan Bilesma in Buffalo, but if it happened, I certainly wouldn't be mad about it.
Mm-hmm.
But I guess we'll just leave it at that for now, and we'll come back to that at a later time. Brian wants to know, and this question is as open and shut as a question can be. I remember hearing after the Kings missed the playoffs, there were some rumors that Sutter wasn't favored in the locker room. Any chance he might come available? I say no. First off, because the Kings aren't that stupid to fire him. Second off, if Sutter was to get fired or leave, he'll just probably end up retiring because I do believe he said that after his Kings days, that's pretty much going to put the wrap on his NHL career. So I think if anything was to happen with Sutter, he either retires or I think he'll just retire. I don't think the Kings would fire him. I mean, unless I don't even think they would fire him like during the season. They would just, if it was really bad, yeah. But I mean, if like after next season, if they want to get rid of him, they'll probably just say, look, we're going to get rid of you. Do you want to retire instead of us firing you? Just to, kind of an honorable honor kill right there. You just instead of throwing you under the bus, they'll say, hey, if you want to retire, you might want to do it now because we're going to fire you.
Yeah, no, I mean,
you can't quit. You can't fire me. I quit. One of those things.
Yeah, basically. I don't think Sutter, if he were to get fired from LA, I don't think he's getting another coaching job just because of the fact that, you brought up a good point. He's probably going to retire. Then if not, there's no way Daryl Sutter's going to get fired in LA, especially not now, because if he was going to get fired, it would have happened already.
Yeah, absolutely. Jonathan wants to know if Eichel stays in college for another year, should the Sabres throw all available talent, young available talent such as those in foreign leagues coming out of juniors NCAA onto the Amherst to gain experience while the Sabres, quote, tank another year, despite possibly having enough talent to maybe be on the bubble for next year's playoffs? Brayton, I'll let you take this one.
What was the question again? I'm sorry.
Should the Sabres, if Eichel stays in college, should the Sabres tank and put all their young talent in Rochester to gain experience while they're bad for another season?
So basically, it's to tank again. I don't know what's going on.
Should they do what they did? Are you okay?
Yeah, I'm fine. But yeah, go ahead. I'm sorry.
Okay, I was going to say, should the Sabres essentially do what they did this season again if Eichel stays in college?
No, absolutely not. No, you take Eichel, you let him play one more year in college. You got, Baptiste Bailey going to Rochester. You've got, Linus Ullmark from Sweden coming over to play in Rochester to be the goaltender. I still think that Tim Murray's going to make a couple of splashes during whether it's free agency or the trade or the NHL draft with trading guys. No, I completely cannot jump on board doing what we did this past year again for this year's draft because there's no guarantee we're going to get 1 or 2. It's anywhere between 1 and 4 that we're going to do this year. And after the top 3, there's not really anybody at this point that I'd be really interested next year for the draft. So I'm absolutely not on board with jumping on the tank train again. I don't ever want to go through a season like this past one ever again.
I'll tell you what, I don't necessarily think that the Sabres would try to lose again. I mean, because at some point you have to start trying to get better.
Yeah.
But even with the talent, that's the another gear of this team. I don't see. I'm just trying to think of how they're going to go out. They're going to make trades to get guys to fill out the roster. They're going to sign some guys in free agency, I'm sure. You're going to have, possibly Mikhail Grigorenko on this team full time. You're going to have a guy like Johan Larsson probably on this team full time. Reinhart might make the team, but I still think Reinhart's going to end up in Rochester for an extended period of time next season. The way it looks to me, I mean, with or without Eichel, this team is still going to be a lot better than they were last year. So if anything, you're going to want to have guys who you think are ready to make the jump from Rochester to the NHL, probably in the NHL, to get some experience, especially with the higher talent level in Buffalo. But I don't think, I mean, the days of seeing like Nick Delorier playing on the second line are over. That's for sure. At least we hope. But there's going to be an increased talent level in Buffalo. So I don't necessarily think that losing is going to be. It's still going to happen a lot, but it's not going to be anywhere near it was last year. So I don't think you're going to try to be bad anymore, because like you said, it's going to be like the NBA starting next year, where you can be the Lakers, where you finish 5th and you end up drafting 2nd. So, or you 4th and draft 2nd or whatever I don't know. I don't pay attention that well.
I want no part whatsoever of any more tanks whatsoever. I've already lifted the tank banner up to the rafters. I'm done. We're not doing this again. We've
all done it. We've had the ceremony and everything. It's legit.
Yep. I was the guest speaker at the ceremony.
I do recall that. If you have not seen that, go on YouTube, check it out. I remember I had Chris make the graphic, and then I saw one of your buddies, one of your co-hosts, tweet out something about the tank banner. So I totally had Chris made a graphic, and then you're like, have you heard the video? And I was like, wait, there's a video?
Yeah.
I checked it out, and the tank banner made its way onto the video. Anyways, next question. Guy says, I'm sure everybody wants to talk about the coaching situation. I'd like to know what's going on at goaltenders. Should they try to get Niemi from San Jose? I doubt Dubnyk will leave Minnesota now that Hammond resigned in Ottawa. There aren't many options out there for a decent starter. I don't necessarily agree with them. First off, I don't think Minnesota can afford to let Dubnyk leave. I mean, even if he regresses back to the mean, he's still going to be a decent goaltender for them. So I don't think that they can let him walk. And obviously, as you mentioned, Hammond is re-signed in Ottawa. Ottawa's going to have to make some moves. I mean, I'm not necessarily certain that I would want Craig Anderson or Robin Lehner, because Lehner has bad concussion problems. I know recently, his most recent concussion, I believe, as of a few weeks ago, he still wasn't able to even do light workouts. That's how bad the concussion has sidelined him. But I'm not necessarily a fan of Antti Niemi in San Jose. I mean, maybe a team that is closer to kind of pushing themselves over the edge maybe could get Niemi, but I feel like Antti Niemi for the Buffalo Sabres, and I felt like this for a while, I feel like signing Antti Niemi to a big contract would be a panic move almost. And if there's something Tim Murray in his tenure as the general manager of the Buffalo Sabres, it's make kind of a ridiculous panic move, like a head scratching panic move. And that seems to me like that would be, you know, if they offered him 5 years and a ton of money or something like that, I would be worried for sure.
Oh yeah, absolutely. No, I agree. Niemi at this point is probably the best goaltender that's going to be out there in free agency. I don't know what kind of goaltenders are going to be available for trade. I'm sure there's going to be a few, but to pull off goaltender trades is a lot more difficult, and we've seen that over the past few years, where it's like goaltender trades. You got it most of the time. You got to give up a goaltender in return. And the Sabres really don't even have that good a goaltender depth as it is right now. And every other goaltender prospect we have hasn't been completely proven yet. I wouldn't mind making a deal to get Niemi, maybe a 2-year deal, just to kind of carry us over in through these final years of the rebuild process. And then once this team can really truly contend, then we can maybe go out and sign another goalie off free agency or trade for a goaltender that's proven and has done more in the NHL. That's younger too, because Niemi is in his 30s. And yeah, he's proven. He's won a Stanley Cup with Chicago. He's had a few good years in San Jose, but I definitely feel that Niemi's probably our best option. Dubnyk's probably not leaving. And other than that, I can't think of another goaltender on the market that's going to be available that would be worth re-signing at this point.
I think I stand by what I have said in previous podcasts and tweets and conversations with hockey people. I am totally on board for Cam Talbot. I'm a big fan.
Oh yeah, trade for Cam Talbot, absolutely. I'd agree with that. Or I mean, even if you really want to get through this season, bring back a guy like Michael Neuwirth.
Well, I think if I'm gonna get what I gather correctly, let me try that again. Let's stop chewing my tongue. If I gather correctly from what I've read on the tea leaves, it seems as if Tim Murray is going to try to acquire his franchise goaltender this offseason. Mm-hmm. It may not be a guy who's going to start 60 games next season, but I think I do end up thinking, for some reason I just lost, I cannot talk at this point. I think that they will acquire somebody this offseason that will be the guy in the future. I mean, they still have Chad Johnson. Don't forget, they still have Chad Johnson, who will be the backup goaltender this season. Remember when he was acquired at the deadline last year, Tim Murray spoke highly about, it was a bad spot for him in New York on the island. But when he was with Boston, his analytics were off the charts. He was a phenomenal goaltender. We look forward to having him play. I feel like Johnson might play, 20, 25, maybe 30 games this year. And then you'll have a goaltender come in and play. Like if you have, say, Cam Talbot come in and play 41 games or even 50 games, you still have 32 extra games you have to fill. I mean, I don't think they're going to bring a guy in and run him into the ground, but they're going to be very smart about things, I would assume. I mean, obviously also depending on who the head coach is, because we've seen some coaches out there that will have a goaltender and they'll ride him into the ground, and you'll get the backup starting once a month. So we'll see what happens. But I think I still think that, as mentioned, I'll repeat myself again, I think Cam Talbot's the guy, not just because of his awesome Ghostbusters goalie masks, but because I do think he's a good goaltender. I think he could potentially become a number one that could lead this franchise to bigger and better things, for sure.
Yeah. Yep, I agree. 100% that Cam Talbot is probably, if you're going to go out and trade for a goaltender, that he would probably be my number one guy.
I'm getting back to Facebook here. Nicholas wants to know, with our center depth with Reinhart, Eichel, Grigorenko, obviously Eichel, speculation at this point, but writing's on the wall. Oh, that's just a formality. Hopefully all strong enough to make the team out of camp. Who will the supporting wingers be outside of Kane, Ennis, Molson, Foligno, and Gianta, and such solid? And should a solid center such as Gergensons be moved to the wing to experiment? Loving the center depth, but winger prospects seem to be a year or two away from a roster spot, i.e. Baptiste, Fashing, Comfort, and Bailey. And Comfort will probably be in Rochester next year, but Baptiste and Bailey obviously will be in Rochester this coming up season. I personally think that if Mikhail Grigorenko stays in Buffalo, he'll be a winger. Sam Reinhart, maybe they move him to wing just because both him and Grigorenko played a few games on the wing at the end of the season and both lamented. I don't think lamented is the right word. That's a bad word. They both stated that they were very pleased with the wing play. And if Reinhardt's center game can transfer to wing and be just as good, if not better, I don't see why you don't switch him to wing if the center depth stays strong. But for now, develop him as a center because, at this point, if all develops well and the Sabres end up with Jack Eichel, you could be looking at 4 or 5 years down the road having top 3 centers be Eichel, Reinhart, Girgensons, and then whoever's your fourth line center. So you'll have a very talented Girgensons playing 14 minutes a game. Eichel or Reinhart will be playing 17 minutes a game. Eichel will be playing 20, 25 minutes a game or something like that. I don't know. But you get what I'm saying. You'll have a lot of talented players. That's how you win a lot of hockey. You have talent spread out throughout the line. So we're not necessarily trying – at this point, you're not trying to mush it all together because the first line is going to be talented no matter whoever centers it with Kane and Ennis on the wings. The second line, you'll have Molson and Ennis. Wait, I said Ennis twice. What am I doing? You'll have Molson, and then you'll have Girgensons at center, and then you'll have whoever on the right wing. The third line, you'll have Gianta, and then Foligno probably in the left wing. So you're kind of getting the depth there, but the Sabres will probably go out, and I still think that they should attempt to make a strong run at a top line right winger. I know Ennis can certainly be that guy, but if you're comfortable with Ennis playing one right wing, then you've got to get a guy who can play two with Molson and Girgensons because that's a lot of the reason why you could think that they might switch. Because if you have Grigorenko, you can find a spot for Grigorenko, but that's why a lot of people think they might switch Reinhart to right wing because if you could have Kane, Eichel, Reinhart, Molson, Grigorenko, or Girgensons, and Ennis. I'm trying to draw this. Trying to draw this thing up in my head as I'm talking about it. I probably should have done this beforehand, but as much as you want to spread the talent around, sometimes you can't get those players in free agency or in trades, so you have to kind of make do with what you've got. But again, it's kind of a loaded question because there's so much that can happen, as I just mentioned. But there's a lot of fun to be had, and there's a lot of things that can switch in the next couple seasons for sure.
Oh yeah, absolutely. There's a lot of big questions at who the Sabres are going to acquire on the wing position because Baptiste and Bailey are both technically right wingers. However, Baptiste was playing a lot of left wing this year. And then you got some guys that are going to be available in free agency. Some guys such as like Brandon Saad's a restricted free agent. You could try and, make an offer sheet for him, or even like Tyler Toffoli can play center. He can play wing. Another guy that I really like, and I think the Sabres should try and go after is Michael Frolik. He's a good two-way right winger. He can play some center if need be. He's an unrestricted free agent, so you can go sign him out of Winnipeg. And the only other guy that really I'd be interested, especially with maybe with right wing depth or anything like that, is heck, maybe you bring in a guy like Justin Williams, or even you bring back Chris Stewart.
I think Justin Williams is not a bad idea, but I think at this point in time, the Buffalo Sabres are not. You could bring him in, but you'd have to grossly overpay him to come to Buffalo, I think. And I think that would be a total panic move. That would just be something that doesn't seem to fit the mold of what they're currently doing. Right. Or like you've got right here, Nicholas also says that maybe the Sabres could pick up Justin Williams or trade for Patrick Sharp. I don't think Patrick Sharp. Patrick Sharp's he's still a very good player, but I think he's like 35 years old.
He's 33, I believe. I have to double check that.
he's older, so it's one of those guys that you pay a lot to get, but is it worth it? And in Buffalo's situation, it might be, but again, I still think the Sabres are far enough away from being a Stanley Cup contender that it just doesn't make sense right now to me, at least. If anything, I would go out and just stack the top two lines. I mean, if you can get a one or two right wing, do it, because obviously with the plethora of picks that you have sitting around, maybe you could make a nice deal or with some of the prospects that you have as well. But at some point in time, you have to say, okay, look at, we're not going to go out and sign aging veterans just to sign aging veterans. Kind of like what Darcy Regier used to do, where he would just go out and say, well, we're going to sign this Niedermeyer guy because he's a good character guy and he won a Stanley Cup. Don't do that. If you're going to bring a guy and bring him in because he can do something for the hockey team. And, I would not mind Justin Williams. I would not mind Patrick Sharp. Frolik would be nice. But, don't try to fit a square peg in a round hole, I guess is what I'm trying to say. And
I agree.
If signing a cheap guy and just saying, this guy's going to play third line minutes, and we're just going to kind of deal until someone's ready to fill the spot internally, or we can trade for a guy, I'm fine with that. I'm totally fine with that. And I'm going to try to find, my phone keeps shutting off on me. So I'm going to try to get this last question up. Mike says, answering someone's question, he says that Neuwirth can be resigned as a free agent. Him and Lindback can hold the fort until our prospects are ready. First off, I disagree. Lindback is not coming back, and I don't think Neuwirth is going to come back either, just solely because I think if they were to bring Neuwirth back, it would probably be as like Chad Johnson, where a guy who can play a chunk of games. Could be wrong, but to me, Neuwirth just does not seem like the guy for this role. I mean, maybe if Artur Zerbe stays, they could bring Neuwirth back, but I'm not sure. It says here they need a number one center and a first line wing to play with Kane, which again, first line center Jack Eichel, winger to play with Kane, Tyler Ennis. He showed that with Team Canada that he could be a very useful right winger with talented players around him. I mean, he's a good player without players around him. He scored 20 goals in 2 straight seasons on 2 of the worst teams ever. It says we also need an offensive defenseman to quarterback the power play before we worry about a goaltender. I also disagree with that. Goaltender is the most important thing on this team now. Like after a head coach, honestly, I think goaltender is your number 2. And not even 2. I honestly think it's a good 1A, 1B type of deal where you get a coach, you need a goaltender.
Yeah.
How does the saying go, Brayton? You're only a coach is only as good as his goaltender.
Yes. Yep.
So you get a strong goaltender for a good coach.
Not only that, but with the way that Terry Pegula has talked over the years, you build out you start with the net, you build out from there.
Exactly.
And the Sabres have good defense, so you just got to find your goaltender, and then let me rephrase. The Sabres have a young defense that could be great within the next 3 years.
Yeah.
And if you find your franchise goaltender now, and then the defense continues to progress as we all hope they will, then, who knows, in the near future, this team can be more than just a contender. They could be a Stanley Cup team. Who knows?
I'm just sitting here reading Twitter right now as they are announcing Mike Babcock to the Toronto Maple Leafs. Just talking here, Nick Kiprio says Detroit not offering more money. If they wanted to keep Babcock, they would have kept him. I mean, obviously with that one, it does seem like it does seem like Detroit's very comfortable letting Babcock walk because they have a guy down in Grand Rapids who they're ready to fill a hole in Detroit. But the one thing I'm reading here, oh wow. Babcock says, I believe this is Canada's team and we need to put Canada's team back on the map. But then he was also quoted as saying, if you think Terry Pegula isn't a star, you're mistaken. So he's got nice words. He's got nice words. You know what? I honestly think, and again, I'm going to sit here and I'm going to continuously say exactly what I've said before. Think about it. the Sabres made a very, 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 very strong run at Mike Babcock. But even Babcock says here, I was trying to figure out what's the best thing for Mike Babcock and his family for the next 10 years. And if they think that Toronto's the best spot, and it's also a legacy thing too, because if Babcock wins a cup in Toronto, I don't think it happens. That's just my biased opinion, but history shows they haven't won a cup since '67. So I'll just stop myself there before I go on a rant about the Maple Leafs. Exactly. But if Babcock wins a cup in Toronto, forever, hockey Jesus up there.
Mm-hmm.
And that I'm assuming that also plays heavily into it.
Mm-hmm.
I mean,
it has to. It almost has to.
I apologize for not remembering who said this, but you almost have to wonder. It was on Twitter yesterday that it was said, but you almost have to wonder if Buffalo and Toronto offered the same exact deal. I mean, because obviously if Buffalo offered 50 and Detroit offered 20 or 25, obviously Buffalo's the choice because that's absurd amount of money. But if Buffalo and Toronto offer the same, you have to take it for what it's worth. The prestige level, the family, the everything overall, not just money, but hockey overall. If he believes that Toronto's a better spot for him, more power to him. There's gonna be a head coach that walks through those doors of the First Niagara Center that believes he's the guy, that he's the right one for that job, and that's the guy I want.
Mm-hmm.
If there's any doubts from the word go as to whether or not this guy thinks that he is the one for the job for the Buffalo Sabres, I don't want him here. And you know what? I'm glad now that we look back on it and hindsight being 2020. Sorry, he's saying hindsight's 2020. You know, and Mike Babcock says right here, as again, this is happening live as we're podcasting. Quote, in the end, I wanted to coach the Maple Leafs, and this was the best fit for my family. If you think Terry Pegula isn't a star, you're mistaken. Like I said, in the end, I wanted to coach the Maple Leafs. That's all. And again, you know what?
You can't be mad about that.
Nope. No anger there. I don't even the guy, a lot of people saying yesterday he was slimy for what he did to the Sabres. I don't even think that. Like, if the guy does not want to be here, fine. Babcock says if you think there's no pain coming, there is pain coming. But again, you know what? He did it. He said exactly what he needed to say. I'm actually tweeting right now about it. No hard feelings, Babcock. This is what happens when we podcast live and we just kind of go off the cuff. It's a lot of fun.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah, absolutely. It's always fun.
Well, I'm glad we didn't do it last night because I was exhausted.
Yeah, I was pretty exhausted too.
All right, I'm just going to tweet this out right now to my followers. I was about to say hundreds, 20, my tens of followers. But yeah, like I said, you know, I want a guy who wants to be here, and if Babcock didn't want to be here, then that's fine.
Yeah.
But with that being said, I think we have hit the nail on the head with this podcast. Look out for talks of Dan Bylsma or Luke Richardson coming to Buffalo sometime soon, I would think. The draft is a little over a month away. We'll have more coverage on that. Going to try to get more articles written up on the website. I know it's the off season, so it's kind of difficult, but just got to get the brain churning a little and get the ideas working. I know sometime soon, Brayton, I didn't discuss this with you before the podcast, but I do think I want to do kind of not necessarily like a depth chart thing, but more or less saying like, look at these are the guys that are going to be on the team next year. These guys aren't, and here's why. And then maybe, you know, that's how we'll do it. We'll do it like, okay, the first line, we think the first line will be this, second line will be this, third line will be that, fourth line will be that. These are guys that might make it or might not make it, but we can make a thing out of it and have fun with it.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I would 100% agree with you there.
Sounds good. And that's, ladies and gentlemen, how a blog works. But with that being said, I am Ryan Wolf at Wolf SHC on Twitter. My co-host Brayton Wilson. Note the handle change. Homeboy got a job. Congratulations.
Yeah.
And graduated college. Also, congratulations.
Yeah, thank you.
At BJ Wilson WGR on Twitter now. He is fancy. Watch out. Do you keep clicking well congratulations in the background, or are you just having pages pop up?
Yes, I do.
Because I'm like, I wish we could hook this. I wish we could hook your soundboard up, because I feel like that would be a lot of fun. We'll have to do that sometime.
Oh yeah. Yeah, it would. Yeah, maybe if we get the chance to podcast together for the NHL draft, I'll hook up. We'll find a way to hook up our soundboard, and then we'll be able to use it.
I'll tell you what. With your podcast at the college radio station, WBNY, you've done some funny things. You've done some very funny things.
Well, thank you.
I look forward to it.
Thank you very much.
With that being said, Sabres fans, take a step back from the ledge. We'll be okay. We'll get through this together. We always do. Keep it tuned to SabresHockeyCentral.com, Facebook.com/Sabres Hockey Central. And as mentioned, follow us on Twitter. We're always there. Have a good day, my friends.